Yeah, man. It's at the dawn of a brand new beginning. For the community, it's a bright horizon. Hey, it is community focus, community focus. Yes, it's for you, me, yes, it's for us. Just tune in, tell a friend and join us to discuss topics that affect us, whether personal or political, local or international. It is a platform for us to build from, so the community can grow to be strong. To the host, Raymond Duguay, Michael Duncan, two of our honorary humanitarian. It's real and it no bogus. Stand against those who stand against us. When situation rough and get tedious, get tedious, get tedious. Community focus, community focus. Community, yo, we have to adjust. Community focus, community focus. Ask the Almighty, Him will guide us. Community focus, community focus. Live up.
Marcus carry words come to pass. Marcus carry words come to pass. Can't get no food to eat. Can't get no money to spend. Oh, can't get no food to eat. Can't get no money to spend.
Good evening. Much respects, brothers and sisters. A very good evening to each and every one of you. This is the Community Focus Radio Program. We are here on where the radio meets the community, where the community speaks to the radio. Brothers and sisters, we are here once again for one sole purpose, the establishment of a grand hierarchy, a self-reliant base that must be based in race first, brothers and sisters, and that's what we're here. We want to remind you that everyone can't do everything. However, everyone can do something. Do whatever you can do to make your lot better, your people better, to leave your community better than you receive it. Remember, you have to put something into something before you can get something out of something. So we're thankful. Brothers and sisters, it was an excellent day at The Rock today. I was here most of the day, and it was amazing to see black people coming through to buy black products from black people and to buy the bread. People were waiting online for an hour because there's such a demand for the bread. But to see the commerce among black people today in The Rock, it was a sight to be seen. We have Brother Duguay, Brother Heru from Florida, Brother Obadile from Ghana, Africa, our dear brother with our people. Brothers and sisters, it's here. Good evening, brothers. Good evening. Good evening. Brother Duguay, how are you?
Greetings, President General. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Good. Okay. Greetings, President.
Brother Heru, how are you? We're not hearing you. We're not hearing you. Brother Obadile, say something. Let's see if we're hearing you.
I can hear Obadile. Obadile, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. Yeah, I can hear you as well, Harold.
Yes. We're hearing you too clearly. Very good. So thank you.
Okay, good. I also, President General, I also have invited Brother Baruch, Dr. Baruch, owner of E-Life Restaurant. Told him about the topic.
Yes.
And Brother Baruch, you've met Baruch. And Baruch has some hands-on subject matter experience on this topic.
Very good.
So
very good.
I thought that it would be appropriate to invite him in and also introduce him to your audience as well.
Brother,
before we get started, big up Raymond. Haven't seen you in many years, Raymond.
It seems that we keep missing each other.
Yeah, man. Saka fet la.
Brother Heru, you're a versatile brother, right?
Yeah. I used to live in Haiti. I spent time in Haiti.
Whoa, hold. When did you live in Haiti?
After the earthquake, I went there.
Really?
And I stayed there for a few months. And I spent most of my time in Milo.
Really? President General, this is where Citadel is located.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, Sanssouci Palace.
Yeah.
The Citadel.
Yeah.
Benin Barracks, you know?
Yeah, okay. were you there, like fact finding, or were you there with like the United Nations? Because they had a big.
No. I went by myself to just help out.
Okay. And
So
how long were you in Haiti?
for maybe 4 months.
Wow.
So I flew into Port-au-Prince. It was probably a month after the earthquake.
Okay, we talked.
And then I went to a fishing village called La Badie.
President General knows the place well. He's been there a couple of times.
Oh, okay. You've been to La Badie?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, and La Badie was very interesting. But I went to La Badie because Carnival Cruise Line was delivering relief goods in the northern part of Haiti because they would sail over there and they would bring goods from Miami to help the earthquake victims. So I went there with some trucks to pick up in the supply chain at La Badie because that's where they would dock the boat. So after we were able to do that, I ended up staying up north because that's where most of the revolution happened in terms of the serious places like Bois-Caïman and you know what I mean? Like you saw, I retraced the footsteps of Dessalines and Henri Christophe and man like Capois L'Amour, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, first, by the way, my roots are from Okap, Cap Haïtien.
Okap, okay, yeah. So for those who don't know, Okap is the northern part. That's pretty much the capital of the north. And Milo is about 20 miles east of Okap. And in between Milo and Okap is Bois-Caïman, where the declaration for the second phase of the Haitian Revolution started.
Okay.
Brother, but then just by you speaking, I could see you say certain words that only Jamaicans would say. So I could tell that you spent time in Jamaica because...
Oh, yeah. I've lived in Jamaica more than Haiti. But, when I lived in Jamaica, I lived in a compound town.
Yes, I remember.
The Maroon Town and also Ocho Rios and a little bit in Mobe.
Yes.
And then in Kingston, I stay around UTEC area, Hope Gardens area.
Yes. So in you speaking... but see, I could tell the words because the words you said, 2 words before you said the person name, man like. Man like Brother Heru. Man
like Capois L'Amour, you know?
Yes. That's a Jamaican thing. So brother Obadeli, please introduce yourself again. The people here are familiar with you. Brother Raymond is very, very familiar with you.
This is Obinfo Badele coming at you, as you mentioned, from Ghana. And I see we have several Ghanaian citizens on the line right now. We got Brother Heru.
Yes.
We got President General, myself. Brother. So a lot of Ghanaians on the line. I don't know why there's so many people who have Ghanaian citizenship on the line today, but we're gonna make sure that our first Assistant President Raymond Duguay also is part of that number. Dr. Baruch as well. We're going to spread the love.
Take care of him, brother. Take care of him.
Yeah,
brother.
Man. So you can travel all over the continent. You know, I think that's the biggest benefit is that you can fly into Kenya. You don't need a visa.
Yeah.
You can fly to La Cote d'Ivoire. You don't need a visa. You can fly to Nigeria. You don't need a visa. Those are some of the places that I've flown to since I've had my Ghanaian citizenship, and that's when it really became real.
So brother, Kenya, with our Ghanaian passport, we can fly.
Passport.
Oh,
just walk in.
Yeah.
There's a whole list of countries. As a matter of fact, if you look at visa-free Ghana, you'll see countries like Jamaica. Matter of fact, for those who were previously on United States passports, there are places all throughout the world, Black countries specifically, where you can go and you don't need a visa. So, so I'm Obinfo Badele Kanban. I am Bamuchidam Hennis, a traditional ruler here in Ekapia Mampong. I'm also a professor, associate professor at the Institute of African Studies at the University of Ghana. I am son to Nana Kamau Kanban. The 1-year anniversary of his transition is coming up in 3 days. Son to Nana Mawia Kanban. She is a former president of the Association of Black Psychologists, husband to Kala Kambon, and father of 5. I have Ama Kosia, Ifya, and Nanayao, and brother to Nataki Kambon as well. So, I kind of give the relationships when I'm introducing myself as well, so you can see me a bit in context. But I'll keep it short, and we'll continue in the actual conversation.
Yes, brother. And I want to say to you, coming to Ghana, man, this was my best time in Ghana, apart from getting the citizenship, but seeing your home, meeting you and meeting other brothers and sisters, and the relationship we have created now is like we're family right now. And
Absolutely.
and it's an honor, brother. This program here, we're counting on you and Brother Heru to be a regular part of this program so we can speak to our people. And you have committed yourself to the UNIA. So we are grateful. You have given your space to the UNIA. So we are grateful, brother. And you couldn't have been a closer brother. But I'm only friends with UNIA members anyway. So you two brothers are diehard UNIA members, and Brother Duge too. He only have UNIA friends.
That's it.
Right. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm actually sitting in UNIA's embassy here on the continent. So I'm very happy about that. We've discussed this, and we're moving forward with that relationship. So where I'm sitting now at BB2Me headquarters, as you mentioned, this is now any UNIA members who are looking to naturalize as Ghanaian citizens, who are looking to acquire land, who are looking to, learn the language, who are looking to do any of those things, that they have a place to come to. They're looking for advocacy on their behalf. This is the UNIA's official embassy here on the continent, and I can't be more proud. Given some of my background, in terms of family and so forth. So, BB2Me, Black Power, Black Liberation.
BB2Me, Black Power. Brother Barack, how are you? I spoke to you for a while. I'm looking forward to coming to DC to try your restaurant. Being a person who have a restaurant as well, I'm looking forward, and I'm thankful for Brother Heru because he's making some important connections where we as Africans, we have to connect where we are. And as we have restaurants and we plan on expanding the Rock, we have restaurants where our brothers and sisters are owning, and DC will be a perfect place. So, brother, please introduce yourself. Thank you for coming on. And please introduce yourself before Brother Duge greet us all. Go ahead, brother.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brother Duncan. I greatly appreciate you and Brother Heru for inviting me on the call and having me be a part of a body of serious-minded brothers who are looking to make a difference in our community. I'm a DC native, father of 5 children, and right now the restaurateur for the last 30 years of my life. I've been a restaurateur. We're down to just 1 location. We had 3 in the interim, but we're now down to 1 location. It made more sense for me to try to manage 1 and be more successful at that 1. We've had many special guests come through, either as lecturers or as presenters, if they're performers or what have you. We've had a lot of things happen inside of our dining room over the last 29 years, and it's really exciting to be a part of the health recovery of our community. As you know, our community is beaten, is broken with regard to our health. And to be a part of an organization that's about lifting up and improving the quality of life and lengthening the life of our people, it's really been a big deal to me. And of course, my people is really important in this. I'm not interested necessarily in lengthening anyone else's life. I really want to focus on our people getting this right and turning our situations around. We know that poor health is one of the reasons why most of us lose our economy at the end of our lives. And so we need to, start looking at that before we get there so that we're not destroying the legacy wealth that we would otherwise pass on to our children. And again, being able to bond with brothers who have big ideas and brothers who've made a lot of great things happen and plan on making a lot of great things happen is very inspirational for me. So I look forward to building with you brothers and making some great things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Brother Duguay.
Okay, welcome to all of our guests. Today is Tuesday, December 24, 2024. And welcome to the UNIA Rock Media Community Focus. Used to be radio show, now it's a podcast. With your host, the President General of the UNIA, the 10th successor to the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, your friend and my friend, the Honorable Michael R. Duncan, and the co-host, that's the first Assistant President General of the UNIA, that's Raymond Duguay. And yesterday, President General, is December 23rd, Henry Highland Garnett, one of our heroes, one of our 7 black nationalists, one of the people that Mr. Garvey studies, learns from, and builds even bigger and better. Okay, so tonight, for the first time ever, we've got a star-studded field. We've got 3 Africans. We got Brother Heru, who's currently in Florida, but you know where he's from. He's from Africa. Well, we're all from Africa. And then second is out on the continent at Abibitumi, the UNIA embassy headquarters in Ghana, Brother Obadale Cambone. And first time ever I'm meeting Brother Baruch. Okay, our exciting topic that will all, well, I know President General is afraid to discuss it, but these brothers are not. And so I know President General, you're timid, but we want to find out the history, the logic, and the evolution. So let's start with Brother Heru. Please start it off, Brother Heru.
So yeah, the topic that we have at hand today is a topic that many people talk about from many different points of view, but of course we're going to talk about it from an African cultural point of view. That's why it's very important to have our good brother Obadale on, who really I really learned a lot from this brother because of how he's immersed himself into African culture, not just one African culture, but several. And because of his foundation in linguistics is actually it's a cheat code to understanding culture. So once you understand language and the migrational patterns of language, you start to understand people and the interconnectedness of different African people and what informed who and who informed what. So, whenever I have an opportunity to talk to Obadale about these things, I take the posture of someone who is learning, because there's a lot to learn. And also the fact that he speaks a few African languages gives a lot of insight in terms of original source material. A lot of times when we talk about African culture, a lot of times we hear about it through rumor and innuendo instead of primary source information. And so having Brother Obadale on is very important. The other aspect of why this show would be very important is because as we talk about polygamy, there are many of us who have an understanding of polygamy from a theoretical point of view and even a cultural point of view. But Brother Baruch actually has an understanding of polygamy from a real point of view, in the sense that he's been in a polygamous marriage himself. And I'll let him talk about that as well. And so it would be remiss for us to have this show and not have Brother Baruch come talk about real life experiences. And this isn't just woulda, coulda, shoulda, or sounds like an interesting idea. He actually lived it. And, I'll yield soon so that Baruch can talk about his experience with polygamy. But so when we talk about polygamy in it of itself, usually it refers to a man with more than one wife, or sometimes even a woman with more than one husband. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about polygyny, which is a man with different wives. That's the way we get down in Africa. So there are some other cultures that do polyandry, but it doesn't work out so well. And the reason why it doesn't work out so well is because, number one, you're going to have demographic collapse, because a woman can be in gestation for 9 to 10 months. And if you have several husbands, that actually limits the gene pool, and it limits the birth rate. And it's probably much akin to what feminism does to a society, because whenever feminism is implemented in a society, you get lower birth rates and you actually get demographic collapse. And the reason why we're saying that is because now the head of the household is no longer the man. You have women as the head of the household. Many times the man is not even present. And then the women in a feminist culture tend to, the feminism that is espoused, particularly in this side of the world, is really a white lesbian feminism, which has no regard for men or family. So when we talk about a polygamy, we're talking about polygyny, and we're talking it from an African point of view. And so where it starts and where the rubber meets the road is just the idea of marriage in and of itself. So when we talk about polygyny, a man with more than one wife, we have to at least talk about the institution of marriage and what the purpose of marriage is in an African context. And in an African context, this idea of marrying for love is actually a very new concept. Marriages happen to bring families together and to bind young people from one family to another family. And really, it was really about the future and posterity and responsibility. And if love happened along the way, that's great. But it was always a sense of duty. And then there are always societal frameworks that would buttress and support the ongoing nature of a marriage. So even when we talk about polygyny, we have to understand that polygyny in the Western context or the European context, I don't really like to use Western, Eastern, because it's like west of what, right? But in a European context, a lot of it is based on romance and these theatrical displays, whereas in an African context, it's a rites of passage and is also about the next generations. And so it would be very odd to have a marriage that doesn't bring forth children. You don't just get married because you're in love with someone, you get married because you're actually extending yourself into future generations. And so, and then it has to do with also ancestral veneration and a bunch of other things. So marriage in the African context, even monogamous marriage in the African context, is quite different than marriage in a European context, where it's about being happy, it's about being fulfilled. And if you're not happy or fulfilled, you can leave the situation. And in an African context, no African man in his right mind, coming from a village environment, could ever say to his community he left his wife because he was unhappy. Everyone would laugh at him. Us being happy is not part of the equation. It's about a sense of duty once you're married, and it's about the future of your lineage, and that's what it's about. And we protect that at all costs, and that's why marriage becomes an important institution. And then when we talk about polygyny, understand that polygyny also had certain type of rules and norms, and it was reserved for certain types of men. It was not something that is reserved for every man. Even in Islam, they have certain type of structure for polygyny as well. But in an African context, it was really men of means who would take on the responsibility to make sure that all the women in the community were cared for, taken care of, and also had some type of male protection in this world. Whereas in the European context, it's pretty much every man, every woman for themselves. And it's a musical chair situation. So even though they try to talk about monogamy in a European American context, most people are not monogamous, number one. They're not practicing monogamy. And if they are, they're at best serial monogamous. What I mean by that is that you can take a woman in 5 years, she'll say she's a monogamous woman, but if you look through her Facebook, she's got, 3 or 4 different serious boyfriends during that 5 years. So she's basically is giving herself to 3 or 4 different men consecutively, not simultaneously, but consecutively within 5 years.
Brother Heru.
Yeah.
Brother, I apologize for interrupting, but is this supposed to be recorded?
I think that they might be recording it. I think that President General and Raymond,
yes.
are you all recording it? Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's being recorded. Yeah.
It will be on YouTube.
Forgive me.
Yeah. So, it has a lot of different contexts, but I will suffice it to say, and I'm going to give up the floor. I just want to just kind of lay a little groundwork, and then I'm sure the other brothers can chime in. I come from a polygamous background. So my grandfather had two wives. His first wife left him because he wanted to bring in a second wife. And then he got his second wife and then a third wife along that. So he had two wives at the same time. And so my father has half brothers that he grew up with. I didn't know about this until later in life, that my uncles were actually, quote unquote, my half uncles, but they're my uncles. They're my father's half brothers because they have different mothers, but the same father. And then my grandfather's father was my great grandfather. He was a king of a certain region in Ghana, and he had 39 wives and 81 children. So I come from that type of background. So the idea of having multiple wives is not something strange or weird to me. It's something actually quite normal. And depending on what you want to do with your life, it's something that works organizationally in terms of having a lineage. And so, for instance, I have probably 1,000 cousins right now, right? Because I had so many uncles and aunts because of my great grandfather having so many children. But what that allowed to do is that if you are someone with a name of repute and you've actually done something for people, your family becomes a beloved family and it becomes a powerful family with a lot of different resources and a lot of what you would call human resources, because you can call an uncle, you can call an aunt, you can call a cousin. So everyone becomes family because you have this large family network that can make things work. The problem is that if you get a bunch of idiots in your family line, then it causes havoc. But it's something to be considered, something to be thought about. And you only have population growth under polygyny. If you do any other type of arrangement, even a monogamous arrangement, people are limited into how many children they typically would have. So for instance, any one of us right now as men, if we had multiple wives, we would have more children, right? Like Obadale has 5, Baruch has 5. But if we had 2 or 3 wives, we would have, children amongst all of them, and it would spread out our seed. And, a lot of people like to use the term be fruitful and multiply. Usually that's when it serves them. But I do think that it needs to be discussed in terms of our line and our lineage, and more men of value within a Pan-African context need to have polygyny as an option open in terms of, for the sake of the race of a people. Because right now, the way things are organized, number one, you got all these single mothers under monogamy. You've got deadbeat dads, which really means that men who are not productive are allowed to procreate. And in an African society, it was the most productive men who were actually procreating, and the men who were not so productive had a hard time procreating. And most African women are very shrewd about men with means, men who actually are able to take care of a family, are able to thrive in a society. Those become the desired men. And it is not seen as gold digging in an African society. It's just women doing what is best for their future by choosing the best man. And so when the best man is chosen and 3 women choose the best man, well, what happens is that those 3 women now become wives, and then their children are children of a great man. And so what a lot of African women figured out is that they would rather share a great man than to have a bum to themselves. And what monogamy does is that it opens up the floodgate for bums to actually have women in families, unproductive men to actually have a chance at having women in families. Whereas if only productive men were chosen by women and accepted by women, then there would be an incentive for other men and young boys to actually be productive. But right now, in the society we're living in, there's no incentive for men to actually be productive, because you'll get a woman and children anyway, just by the fact that these women feel like they're lonely and they don't have any other options because, quote unquote, all the good men are taken. And in a polygamous society, that's just not the case. You have men who own restaurants, men who own businesses, men who own embassies.
Men who are president
men who
generals,
are actually
men who are
running
president
serious
generals of the
things.
UNIA. I know those
Yeah.
type of men. Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. So these serious men should, uh, in the right context, in the right historical time, all of these men would have had several wives and several compounds and children, and probably have a wife in Senegal, a wife in Rwanda, a wife in South Africa, a wife in Egypt, a wife in different places, taking care of different kingdom type businesses to spread the legacy of your last name. So this has happened. People call people kings and queens and all that, but if you're going to call someone a king and this is something you want to embrace, understand that in African context, very, very, very few kings only had one wife. It's just that just wasn't like, is actually an anomaly.
Yes.
So if we're going to start embracing that language, then you have to start embracing everything that comes along with this type of designation and the responsibility that comes along with it. So I'm gonna stop right there and let the other brothers chime in.
Sure. Thank you, brother.
Babale, you want to take it?
I thought you mentioned Dr. Brooke, so Dr. Brooke.
Oh, okay.
I can come in after Dr. Brooke.
Well, first off, I apologize. I don't know why I wouldn't think that you all would have this recorded, but I was like, man, what if he doesn't? So please forgive me for that terrible interruption. But with regard to my polygynous experience, I was involved with a community of people where this was a part of our culture, and we had upwards to 7 wives. I got up to 2. And it was a very, very beautiful experience. It was very beautiful to watch 2 women embrace one another and love one another and care about one another. And the polygyny, I think you mentioned it, it's not the Hollywood polygyny that we're seeing presented to us on social media now, or Americans' version of polygyny that we're seeing propagated on social media, where a man is got his 2 naked wives in the bed with him, and all of those things, whether they happened or not, it wasn't a part of what we were doing. What we were doing was building community, and we knew that in order to build community, we had to build families, and we had to build strong families. So as Heru mentioned, those of us who had the resources to support not only financial but the emotional and spiritual and otherwise resources to support the maintenance and the needs of a family would take on other, and would be approved to be and would be expected to take on other wives from the community. As the dynamic of the male-female relationship ratio that we see out here in America was even worse in our community. It was fewer brothers and more women as compared to what we see in the United States of America. So it was very welcomed. And it was easy because the community supported it. So people that had troubles, people that had challenges, there was always a sister or a brother who could, we could come to and talk to, either for, cooperative mediation or for individual counseling. And so it was all about, building a stronger community, because we knew that if we could get these examples of relationships to be successes, and it wasn't that they were easy, and, it was a challenge. First, it was a challenge in dealing with, I can't believe that I'm with 2 women, in a relationship, and we're married. It was very challenging. The first challenge that most brothers ran into was, oh, I want to do it again, like the night of the wedding. It was like, what? I got 2. I want 3. And it was a challenge to make brothers understand how important it was. Okay, no. You need to get rooted in what you're doing. You need to build and strengthen what you're doing, so that, when if you do go out and pursue another relationship, that you have the footing to support that decision, and you don't end up with a completely broken family without everybody, away from you. But I had 2 very supportive women, and we were very strategic. And what we did, it was very interesting how many people knew I was married to one, but didn't know I was married to the other, and vice versa. We'd all be in the same room together, and they would know her to be my wife, and they would know this other one. It'd just be somebody I was always around a lot. And, we dealt with that as we felt necessary, what we shared with people. But it was used very strategically, as we would go to different political events, or we would go to community events, or we would be a part of conversations. And we would always huddle inside the vehicle before we got on and talk about, okay, these are the things that we want to make happen, and this is, so this is what I need you to do, and I need you to do this, and if you all do this, I need you all to hit me on my cell phone so I know what the deal is so we can move forward. And also with the raising of children, it was very, very valuable to watch my children be raised by two women and myself, in that there was never a time when they weren't given the support that they need, whether it was homework or, personal development, or it was, just playtime. There was always somebody there for them, as opposed to, them needing to get behind some electronic device and spend their whole day, hitting buttons. So that was a very beautiful thing. And my children really appreciated and loved their two mothers. It has since kind of deteriorated a little bit. In some ways, it's deteriorated on both sides, even between the children and even their own biological mother. I only had children by one woman when I was in a polygamous relationship. And the reason why I chose the other sister was because she was a leader in the community and she was not married. And I felt it was a crime that we would send her out to represent our community, and she couldn't speak about her family. She couldn't speak about her husband. She didn't feel protected. And I watched this happen, and I made a commitment to her. It wasn't about love, like Heru said it. She wasn't even my type of woman. But I was like, but you don't need to be out representing us and not being with a man. So she happened to make it very easy, because she fell in love with me and was like, how quickly can we make this happen? So it was very easy to do, but it was definitely on my part a duty. And I felt obligated to make sure that we were represented as best possible when she went out and spoke. And also, she was a very good person. She was the leader of the sisterhood in our community in the local DC area, and she wasn't married, which didn't make any sense to me. So I enjoyed my time with it. I do understand some of the things that I needed to do a little differently, as that the relationship lasted with one for 21 years and the other for 7 years. And it deteriorated when two things happened. As I pursued another relationship, and I made some mistakes. I made some mistakes with regard to making such a big deal about how special this next pursuit was, and how this is really going to be the greatest thing that happens to us all, as opposed to making the two women that I had know that they were the greatest things that happened. So understanding some of the dynamics of how to pursue when you've got two women at home, how to support them and take care of them, are things that I probably should have learned a little more about before I stepped out there. And also, I would say, on another note, a very big positive thing is we all worked jobs. And so here it is, we had 3 incomes coming in to support a one household, and that was tremendous. Now, eventually they left their jobs and they worked for me as I was building the restaurant. And once I opened up the restaurant, one was over the kitchen and all the food production, and the other was over the catering. So they worked together, and they had a very good relationship. Their relationship between themselves was better than mine, which made for certain things that I didn't do well, they filled in the gap. And one of the things that I didn't do well is I wasn't a big celebrant of birthdays and holidays and anniversaries. Well, they made sure that all of it was done the way that it should be done, that they would all love and like the experiences that they would have. And I didn't have to worry about that. I always knew that, okay, you're going to get her what she wants for her birthday, and it's going to be from me, and you're going to get her what she wants for her birthday, and so on. And so it was a nice relationship. I do miss having that relationship and that balance in my home, and having that strength in my home. Also, the education of our children. We educated our children at home, up until a point, and it was good. They got a very good foundation. There was no need for things like social services in our community, in our broader community, because it was all inside of the community. You had grandma, you had auntie, you had cousin, all living right inside the house, along with our, polygynous relationship. All of that was right inside of our house. I had a 4-bedroom house at one point, and we had 17 people living in the house. And so it was advantageous as long as it was harmonious and it was good. Of course, when things broke down, it would be a little challenging, but we quickly repaired that and got us back on our footing. So it was, for me, the polygynous experience was good. I look forward to doing it again. And yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, wow, that's a whole lot of information, a whole lot of experiences, brother. So you're saying with all that, you're still willing to do it again?
Oh no, I feel obligated to do it
Yes.
again. It's not my necessary desire. I think we all have had our challenges in relationships with women, and it's we scratch our heads and ask ourselves, why would I want to do this with 2 women? But I feel an obligation to find that woman or women who want to be a part of this building of our future, to give us a future, because otherwise I see our community is in decline. And so it isn't as much so a desire of my heart as it is, of my responsibility to those who put me here and who've taught me, and who have expectations of me. So that's kind of where my desire is.
But you mentioned that you felt that it was your duty, and I could understand. How did the sisters feel, both of them?
Originally, the first woman I was married to was very disappointed, very unhappy. I brought her from the outside community, good Christian woman, and I brought her into our community. And she knew that this was a part, but she was acting like it wasn't going to happen. And so when it did happen,
I'm sorry, Dr. Baruch. Oh, just go back a bit. You're saying the sister was aware of this community, so you were already living and breathing in an polygynous community.
Yes.
Oh, but you had never gone out and had one, but you were already okay. Continue.
And polygyny was not the norm. So even though this was something that was a part of our community, I would say it was probably only 20% of us who engaged, maybe 30% engaged. Most everyone else was in a monogamous, and that was probably for reasons like what Heru said. Some people just didn't have it to do. Others, varying dynamics. They were either, they were too old, or they were too, their queen was a little too strong, and it was, she kept the gate up around them, so they were henpecked. And it was, so the varying dynamics. But in this situation, my first wife, again, brought her from, I was in college with her, and she was not interested at all. It was probably the single most difficult thing for her to deal with. But as the leader of the sisterhood, my second wife, as she started developing a relationship with her, it was very quick that they bonded, and she understood it. It wasn't easy for her on the night that we got married. The second wife, when I got married, the first wife was troubled. And, she kept telling me, it's just not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. And I said, I understand that, but it isn't going to be the same. And I don't expect it to be the same. I expect for what I'm doing and the things that I'm preparing us for, this is all going to get better. It's going to be better. And it got very good. It got very good. We were a model family in our community. Many people looked to us, and, we represented the community very well as a polygynous family. Our children were well-mannered. Our children were attractive. The women were attractive. I'm in a reasonably attractive brother, and it worked out very well. Worked out very well. My second wife, like I said, she was older than me, but I didn't say this. She was not able to have children, and that was kind of disappointing for me. But on the same in the same token, I was concerned that we can't have a leader who doesn't represent every aspect of what we are as a community of people. And she's being put out there, and she gets in her car and she drives home by herself. And I was like, well, there's no brother that's with you. You just got finished speaking on a forum about polygyny. You just got finished speaking on a forum representing the community, and she would go home by herself. And I said, that's ludicrous. So we didn't let that continue. And she was not pursued by many brothers because she couldn't have children.
Wow.
So that was also, one of those qualifiers that brothers are looking to make babies. So they find somebody who can, and they're not interested. But for me, I saw beyond that and recognized that, well, we can't have her be the face of our community and she not be at the top of all levels of what it is to be a Hebrew Israelite.
Very good. Thank you so much, brother, for the information. Well said. Well said. Well said, brother Obadile. What's your take on this?
Yeah, so I'll start off with a proverb. It's an Akan proverb, and it speaks to, basically some of the ideas that were shared in terms of a man of means. So one is Obi and Wari no Kuno Saman Kwa, and it translates to no one marries her husband's Samai is like the spirit that exists after that person transitions Kwa for no reason. And basically what it refers to is a practice where if a man of means has multiple wives, if that man passes on, then it's expected that someone in the family would take on that person's all of their wives, especially in a traditional rulership context. So like if the ruler in front of me had 4, 5, 6 wives, then me as the successor, as the one to inherit, I would take on all of those wives, in the saying that the wife wouldn't do so for no reason, that essentially it's because she sees that the successor is also a man of means and is able to take care of her and so forth and so on. So, a lot of it comes down to, cultural practices. And, I often look at it in terms of, artificial selection versus natural selection. So if you're in a context of natural selection, then the females will decide, that this is the strongest male. And usually the males would have to fight for that right, whether you're looking at bison, buffalo, they'll, fight over, who's the lead. And the one who is able to defeat all the young, up and coming male buffaloes is the one who's able to mate, with all the other ones, and, so forth. Zebras do, a similar thing. And, that kind of even takes it beyond, we'll talk about, it's a cultural practice amongst, Black people in general. But if you even look at mammals, specifically, but not just mammals, you'll find that this is something that is just part of, a natural selection type of context. So whether you're looking at, lions, whether you're looking at wolves, whether you're looking at, whatever, polar bears, if you're looking at tigers, if you're looking at leopards, you're looking at prairie dogs, and so forth and so on, that this isn't something where, it has to be, in our society, we do this, that this is just a very natural, type of thing. Dolphins do it, killer whales, and so forth. And it's really, as Brother Heru mentioned, it's in the interest of the gene pool that, the strongest males, the males that have the most means. In a human context, of course, it tends to be the ones who, have social capital, economic capital, and capital of other types. But, in a natural context, that's just what's going to happen, that the one who is, best suited to, continue the gene pool is the one who's able to do so. And the ones who are not suited, it's a very similar thing. But now, if you look at an artificial selection context, this is where, essentially Black people are functioning, in places like the United Snakes, in places like the UKKK, Ku Klux Klanada, and so forth, that we're in a context where the ones who are able to pass on their genes are the ones who are selected by the enemies. So it's not the one who's strongest, it's not the one who is, so forth and so on. It's that, it's basically a situation where if you smile a lot and, you skin and grin and, you bootlick and you whatever, all right, now you can be the vice president of ethnic affairs for, this magazine or so forth and so on. So it's really not a natural context for us as Black people. It's similar to, the owner of the dog can decide which dog is able to mate, but if that dog, bites my child, then put him down. If that dog, isn't friendly, or if I don't like whatever, then, I have the basically the power to decide whose genes get, are able to be passed down and so forth and so on. So living under, a Eurasian type of culture, this is essentially where we find ourselves, is that, they've made certain decisions on our behalf that are really rooted in Greco-Roman culture, that are really rooted in, Christian culture and so forth and so on, as it has, progressed through Western Eurasia specifically. So in that type of culture, if you look at, as a matter of fact, there's a good book, it hasn't been mentioned yet, but by Dr. Patricia Dixon, We Want for Our Sisters What We Want for Ourselves. And what's interesting is that at the beginning of the book, she actually goes into a lot of the things that people just take to, oh, well, this is American culture. But a lot of the things that are done that we just assume is quote unquote normal, they're very much rooted in, certain Greco-Roman practices. They're very much rooted in the specific history of Christian sanity as it has taken place in Western Eurasian culture. So yeah, I think I'll just pause on that. I've, made just a brief submission, but, the main points I wanted to bring is that, you have multiple proverbs in, Akan and Yoruba that discuss what, we're giving it the name, polygyny and polygamy, where poly, is referring to many. And then you have the gamy referring to marriage, polygyny, where the gyn is same thing you have in gynecology. But, there isn't even necessarily a specific word to describe, oh, well, this is such and such type of marriage, and then that's a different type of marriage. It's just marriage. So, this is just a traditional family as we do it as Black people. It's not like, oh, we have to give a certain type of word for it and so forth and so on.
Right.
Like this is just awaria, right?
Right.
It's not, oh, let's find a word to describe this type of a word.
Right.
Because really, and this is the point also made by Dr. Patricia Dixon, that the form of marriage that is the outlier is actually the Western Eurasian type of marriage system, where you would have to find an explanation for monogamy. It's like, well, why are you doing that? Because the norm is, here is a man, who's able to take care of multiple wives. And that's physically, that's economically, that's, health-wise, that's, across the board. But why in the world would you do something called monogamy? And, really it comes down to their unique history, which is not our history. But because we're in an artificial selection context where they call the shots and they decide whose genes get, passed along, we end up going for that. And last point I'll make is, oftentimes it comes to us through, for example, the music that we listen to, right? So that's one way that it gets inculcated. Some is just very directly that, a papal bull or mandate has said such and such, and then we just go along with that. But, even we get white culture through Black music. So you'll get a song, an R&B song talking about, oh, what is it? You're getting in the way of what I'm feeling, as Jill Scott, where she runs up, oh, you trying to mess with my man, and, grab your wig off and whatever. And it's like we're really operating in very unnatural ways, and that's because we're in a very unnatural context. And it's sort of like a rat in a Skinner box that's doing very unnatural things because it's been trained through operant conditioning of which lever to push in order to be able to eat, which lever to push in order not to get electrocuted and so forth and so on. So this is a rat that's learned how to behave in ways that a normal rat would never behave in. So I'll just pause on that, and then we can continue the discussion.
Quick question, brother. Sometimes when you come to the continent, you see a lot of Muslim, Arabs, Islamic people. They're practicing this kind of relationship. Did we get it from them, or is this rooted in African culture and African society?
Right, definitely we did not get it from them. You can find this going back all the way to classical Kemet, before there was any Islam, before there was any Muhammad and so forth. So, in the for the Islam context, they have where you can marry up to 4. They have Surah An-Nisa, where they say marry those that please you of women, 2 or 3 or 4. But if you fear that you will not be just, then marry only 1. So that's their context, and it's coming from Muhammad. Everything they do is coming from that type of background. For me, I got married in a traditional way. I'm a traditional ruler. And according to the laws of Ghana, there's no upward limit in terms of how many wives that I could marry as a traditional ruler, having married legally in the traditional context, as they call it here. So, Ghana recognized Christian sanity marriages, civil marriages where you go to the court, Islamic marriages. But in the traditional marriage, it's like, Heru said, I think he says grandfather or great grandfather had 39 wives, that there's no, upper limit. And again, you'll find that, for example, Ramisu Usamaat Rasa Tepenra, I think he has somewhere up to like 100 wives or something like this. But you'll find that all throughout, the continent, again, we're talking about, the man of means, the man who's able to do so is the one who's able to, have more children. And that's in our own natural context, where it's really, the women who do that. I remember like Yoruba women, especially, and this also comes up in the book, there's usually the first wife who will look for the second wife so that she can be the Iyaloja, which is the mother of the market. This means, it's an economic position where basically women in the Yoruba context run the whole economy in terms of the market and how things are done. But, if the wife has to tend to the husband, has to be cooking the food, has to be, taking care of the children, has to be, doing all these various things inside of the household in terms of her responsibilities, it lowers the, types of things that she's able to do out in society. So oftentimes the first wife will be the one who goes and looks for the second wife, so the second wife can come and fill in all those roles. And then, third wife, so forth, can fill in these roles. And then she's able to do various things, from an economic perspective and the things that she wants to do in the larger society. So yes, just to answer your question, no, we did not get it. When we were doing this, there wasn't even in Islam. And again, that's part of the reason why I wanted to even abstract a bit from even human society, that this is just normal behavior for, mammals in general. But you can find birds that do it. You can find insects that do it. You can find marsupials, you can find whether it's primates, ungulates, whether it's fish, amphibians, reptiles. I can give you a list of some of them. Birds and so forth, that this is just a natural thing that any intelligent social creature can do. And, for example, the lions aren't, looking to red-winged blackbirds in terms of trying to find out, oh, well, should we do this? Oh, all right, is this against the law? Is there a religion that tells them? Male marine iguanas aren't, trying to find or get notes from wolves. Bullfrogs aren't trying to get notes from bluehead wrasses or anything. That these are creatures all throughout the animal kingdom who have all come to the exact same conclusion that if we want our gene pool to proliferate, if we want to even exist, then this is what we need to do. So, I think that even putting it in that broader context of existence, of survival, it helps us move away from, oh, well, this is just, this religion that is allowing this or so forth. No, this is broader than religion is. If you want to exist, then this is what you do. And again, fish don't have to take notes from lion prides before they realize this is what we need to do if we want to proliferate, if we want to exist.
Okay. No, hold it. I have one question, Brother Obadile. So we Africans have been doing this relationship, not so much because, and I need you to answer this for me, not so much because there were, let's say, more women than men. This was basically for the extension, the continuity of the species. So as the person or the African male person who is best able to support and do this. So it wasn't, so just confirm for me, this wasn't about because there were more African women than African men. This was more so to extend to guarantee the continuity of the species. Please answer.
Right. So basically, one of your reasons for existing is so that you can become an ancestor. And one of the main ways by which you become an ancestor is by having children. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the prerequisites. There's a good book called African Spirituality on Becoming Ancestors, that goes into it. That's expected that you fulfill your nkrabia, that's your destiny, to translate it into English. And, part of doing that is to ensure that, you have children, because literally who's going to pour libation for you if you don't have children? So, this is in terms of continuing the gene pool, is ensuring that you have the children to do so. So when you have proverbs such as, and it translates to when a person dies, his or her tongue does not rot. And the idea is that that person's those who come after that person are the ones who continue the speech, continue saying the sayings of that person, and you keep that person's name alive. There are stories about, here's a person who isn't dead unless that person is forgotten. So one of the main ways to make sure that you're not forgotten is by having children, and those children are the ones who carry on your legacy. So you'll find, multiple proverbs, multiple folk tales, and so forth that all speak to this. You have certain times different motivating factors. So especially during the anti-Black chattelization war, that's what they call the quote-unquote slave trade, then that was definitely one of the major factors, is that oftentimes you would have able-bodied men who would be enslaved and so forth and so on. But, again, this goes long before that. So that can be a specific factor in a specific historical context, but that's not the only factor. There are multiple factors that go into it. And again, if you are interested in your survival as a species, as a person, on an individual level, on a social level, and on a collective level, even beyond that, then these are the types of things that have been done and that continue to be done. I had mentioned earlier Usamaat Rasa Tepinra, who's known as Ramesses II. He's known, his great royal wife was Hamnesut, that is the wife of the ruler Nefertari. He also had Iset Nofret, he had Ma'at Hor Neferure, he had Bint Nath, he had Merit Amen, he had Nebet Tawi, he had Hent Mire, and those were what were referred to as the principal wives. But then he had, many other wives in addition to that. And he was believed to have fathered over 100 children, with estimates ranging from 100 to 150, which gives you a sense of what his household, was. And again, you're talking about a good 2,000 years, thereabout. Yeah, somewhere like 1,500, 2,000 years before Muhammad ever existed and Islam ever existed. So you're talking somewhere around 1279 BCE, going to around 1213 BCE. So again, he wasn't waiting for, any of these, imaginary religions or imaginary whatevers to come along to say, oh, you know what? Maybe I need to have children. No, this is just normal behavior for any intelligent social species that wants to exist on the planet Earth.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wow.
Right. So, I think that's really important to really understand what the brother's saying, because what he's saying when he's giving analogies to different species, right? What he's saying is that when an organism that's operating in concert with other like organisms, we would call that a lion tribe, let's say, or a human community, a culture, an ethnic group, or what have you, or, baboons or what have you. Whatever happens when these entities are allowed to think of their best interests, whether these thoughts would be just innate or they're fashioned over time, like how, monkeys learn tools over time. At some point, these organisms, in terms of their group structure, within their own self-interest, will come up with the vehicle of polygyny, naturally. And because when the brother was talking, I'm thinking, and he's talking about these different animals, and it actually, what's interesting is that even with biologists, monogamy is rare.
Right.
Amongst all animals. When you find an animal that's actually has a lifelong mate and sticks with that mate only, I think it's only one animal. I think it's some bird or something like that. Forget what.
Albatrosses do
Is
that.
it albatross? Okay. Mm-hmm. So most animals have come up with polygyny as an institution, and monogamy is actually an outlier. Whereas what is within indigenous groups, this happened amongst Native Americans. Those chiefs had, All those men like Sitting Bull and these men, they had different wives. So when people are left to their own devices and they have to start thinking about like their best interests, polygyny gets adopted. So then the question becomes, if it has now become normative for polygyny not even to be on the table in a Black household conversation, are we actually acting in our best interests? If all living things and groups end up with polygyny as the main pairing structure, when they are able to actually think for themselves under their own best interests as animals, like Brother Baudelaire was saying, like, fish don't care about what the lions are doing. The lions shouldn't care about what you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when they are all in their own enclaves, these are the pairing modalities that they come with, which is polygyny. And it is based on the selection. The man, the strongest man, the most capable man, male, is the one that gets to procreate. And human beings have seen this aspect of genetic strength, right? That's why we have hereditary monarchies. Because usually most of these monarchies start from, if you look at different African, kingdoms, they talk about the beginning. Usually the leader is the founder of that ethnic group or that language group or whatever, or in that particular area. They're the founder, and sometimes it's coming off of disasters. And it's about who performed best during a disaster. This is the person who we're going to make our leader. And there must be something special about this man compared to all the other 1,000 men in our group, and this one performed the best. We're going to make this one the king and make it hereditary so that his genes pass on, because his son and his son's son is going to have that, what we call moja.
So brother, let me ask you a question then. If that's the case then, and we are seeing the predicament that our children are in, we're seeing the predicament that there are a whole lot of single mothers, and because of that, we are seeing a high crime rate in our schools, a high incarceration rate among our young men and young women who will end up going to prison and becoming the new slave plantation. Do you think a polygamous system would better help the kind of nonsense we see that's happening with our communities, with our people, with Black people in this society here?
Well, we have Brother Baruch tackle that one,
Well,
and then
I think
Obadale should chime in.
Yeah, I think it's kind of twofold, because not every male human is prepared to engage in the responsibility and duty of being a husband first, let alone a husband of more than one wife. And so there's some things that kind of have to come into place first before we look to brothers to take on the responsibility of a family. And I would say, yes, that if we had those strong families in place, then yeah, you wouldn't see the incarceration rate. You wouldn't see cousins shooting at cousins and killing cousins in Chicago and in many of the other urban centers. That people are going to funerals and realizing, well, wait a minute, I killed my own family member. It's ridiculous how rampant this has become. But what has happened is the state of consciousness has fallen to such a low level that it is so it's so far from the minds of our people that what we need to do, or all of the things that we need to do, me in the space of eating healthy, it's so far from our state of consciousness. It's like, it's bizarre. In fact, all of what we need to do has been made negative. So what we need to do in the space of relationships is being taught to us as a negative thing. What is being now shared with us as a positive thing is two men getting together, two women getting together. That's a non-threatening. That's empowerment. That's me being able to be who I want to be and when I want to be, and so on and so forth. And it's this conditioning that we're going through in the United States of America. It will not allow us the wherewithal without being heavily opposed. It will not allow us the wherewithal to really practice and exercise the good cultural lifestyle of our historical brothers and sisters coming off the continent, or even being here before they arrived. It's not designed that way. So even when we make that move, when I come into a room with two women on my arm, I'm frowned upon, yet homeboy can come in the room with another boy on his arm, and they're cheered and looked upon as, you're just expressing yourself, and you're being what you naturally feel like being. But I'm a pimp. I'm taking advantage of these women, and these women are being exploited. So I think in order for us to normalize, a polygyny, or a community that accepts polygyny as a way of marriage or lifestyle for families, is we've got to get out from up under the indoctrination of self-destruction, which is what America is doing, which is why everything good, there's nothing that's good for us that is not opposed.
And if I can also speak to that briefly, I think that's a very salient point that Dr. Baruch is making. So, we've gone into, beyond human societies. If you look in the animal kingdom, of which, humans are also, included in primates, only 3 to 5% of creatures, animals in the animal kingdom practice what may be referred to as quote unquote monogamy, depending on how it's defined. And that is directly correlated to endangered species as well, that those are creatures that have decided to do that, for whatever types of reasons, going along, in the course of time. So the albatrosses that were mentioned before are critically endangered. And, part of this is that, they mate for life, and they may stop reproducing if their partner dies. And of course, that has an impact on their very existence. You have the Hainan gibbon, which is the world's rarest primate, and it struggles to reproduce due to lack of available partners. And they have, taken on that. So that's very rare for primates to do whatsoever. And it's directly correlated to the fact that these primates are doing a very unprimate thing. Now, I don't know if that's because of their environment or how that came about, but, you actually find a direct correlation to the few, like I said. So if we're looking at 95 to 97% of all species of intelligent creatures on the planet Earth have, come up independently. There's what they call convergent evolution in terms of how they operate. They've all come up independently with the strongest males need to have the most females, and that's how the gene pool is able to proliferate and so forth and so on. Those few creatures in that 3 to 5%, a lot of them are on the way out. They're not even going to be, existing. So if you look at clownfish, which is a very, type of fish that does that, now because of coral reef degradation, they don't have enough partners. They're doing something that's very rare in the animal kingdom, and they're actually suffering from that. And I want to bring this up because in societies, human societies that, are quote unquote supposed to be practicing monogamy. So Japan is very highly monogamous, and it has one of the lowest birth rates globally, 1.34 births per woman in 2020. If you look at Italy, that's one of the lowest, in the world. 1.24 is their fertility rate. And again, they're highly monogamous. This is where the Pope has declared, oh, you're supposed to do it this way. All right, cool. All right, well, now y'all are about to be not existing, especially when COVID happened and how hard Italy got hit, on top of that. So, those types of societies are not able to deal with, things that happen in the environment, whether that's loss of coral reefs, whether that is COVID, whatever it is, because they're operating in a way that's very unnatural, I would say. Germany, fertility rate of 1.53 by 2020. So they're even doing government policies to incentivize higher birth rates. So you see both in the animal kingdom and in quote unquote human societies, a similar type of thing, that those monogamous systems are very easy to disrupt. They're very able to break down. And just as Dr. Baruch said, this is the point I'm making in terms of for Black people in a quote unquote white society, we're actually subjected to artificial selection in the sense that they're the ones who dictate this is what you're supposed to do. And the things that they tell you you're supposed to do are the things that are outside of your best interest. And the things they tell you, no, you shouldn't do that, those are the things that are actually in your best interest. So if our enemies are given, I'll talk about it in terms of their heroes are our enemies and our heroes are their enemies. So if they say, oh, the founding fathers, I'm looking at Thomas Jefferson, this is a rapist, this is, a torturer, this is, a psychopath and so forth. But then they'll have a statue and say, oh, this is the greatest guy. So anyone who they think is great, we know that is an enemy of our people. And then the ones who we think are great, whether that's Nana Nat Turner, whether that's Nana David Walker, whether that's Nana Denmark Vesey, whether that's Nana Charles Deslandes, whether that is Nana Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and so forth, those are the ones who we should look to. So again, because it's outside of their interest for us to exist, for us to proliferate, for us to, have our gene pool, move forward, they're going to give us strategies such as, you're a brother, go hook up with another brother, because all creatures are very clear that that's not going to ensure your survival. Actually, nothing is going to come, out of that other than doo-doo. So that's not going to be, in the interest of your survival. And that's why they would encourage that, but then they would discourage the things that you would do in your own natural environment, that any creature that intends to exist would do in its natural environment. And any creature that doesn't want to do that, whether that's humans or any other creature, those are the ones that are going extinct. So, I think that's just the points I wanted to make on that.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. But before we get the final statements from everyone, we want to hear from Brother Duguay.
Well, I'm listening to all the three great Africans here, and I can't help but think of Mr. Garvey. The whole world is run on bluff. They convince you what's good for you is not, and your enemies. Mm-hmm. So I could completely embrace what Brother Dr. Badele was saying. So there are merits to this.
Yeah.
And I've never looked at it that way, but the continuity of the species, that's first. That falls in line with race first, falls in line with Mr. Garvey, falls in line with Dr. Amos Wilson. So I thank you, all three Africans. Job well done.
Final statements from each of you. But I just have a little statement to say. So if all this being equal, and Brother Duguay is such a smart guy, one of the brightest guy I know, shouldn't you have like 100 children, brother?
Maybe in the old days, but now I'm trying to build the UNIA. I've had my children.
But imagine having 100 Raymond Duguay Jr. running out there, what the world could be like.
Sure, but President General, we live here in this, and I think Brother Badele says it well. It's an artificial setting. Yes, so
of course, I know, brother.
I agree with you. No, but yeah.
But the Brother Harry would sound like he likes that statement. Go ahead, brother. Last three statements from everyone before we close. Go ahead, Brother Harry. Floor is yours.
Yeah, just want to say it's a good conversation. I think if people saw the title, they were probably expecting a lot different than what they heard, right?
Absolutely.
Baruch really set the tone in the sense of saying that when he got into, you see, a lot of people have the idea of polygamy as if, the man's getting whatever he wants, and
right.
He just wants more sex with different women, and they don't understand that, like,
you can do that without being married.
Yeah, you can do that without being married. And then the other side of it too is that what people don't understand is, like, if you've been married, sex is actually a small part of that relationship. It's a very small part. Like, once you're married, sex actually is a small part of your relationship. You have other things that you're doing in terms of children, and like, sex is actually a very small part of it. And but people don't understand that for a man to take on more than one woman and to do it in earnest, that's a different type of man he's actually taking on a burden. You know, like a lot of people think that it's like, oh, it's a privilege. It is a privilege, but it's also a burden. When a man decides, and you could hear what Baruch was saying, he did not decide to do it because he was in love and swept away and all that. He did it because he believed that there was a sense of duty that someone had to step up and fulfill. And typically, when you see people men talking about polygyny in a responsible way, we understand that it's a lot. And some of us would feel like, man, you know, I actually like my alone time. I like being alone. And if I wasn't married, like right now, I'd have a much more peaceful life in certain ways. But we understand what the prize is. And that prize is that lineage, is that spreading of your genes and your influence through many generations. And the men who think like that are prepared to step up to the plate to do what's necessary to make that happen. And if polygyny is one of those things, we accept it. And I'm going to close out, and please understand that this is not what a lot of men are necessarily looking for in terms of everything that comes with it and the responsibility. Typically, human beings are looking for less responsibility. So a man who really wants to execute polygyny in the correct way is actually a man who's saying, I want more responsibility, right?
Yes.
And if he gets that responsibility, he's expected to perform. And the reason why he's getting that privilege of a second wife is because he's already shown performance with the first one, and so forth and so on. So it's a value-based system that rewards men who are high performing and valuable in their community. And there needs to be a reward structure that's in place like that to incentivize young men to be better men. Because right now, young men have no incentive to be better men because of the monogamy structure where, you know, the women can't choose to be with the married man. You actually would be better off with that married man. I know many women would be better off if they were in polygyny with Baruch from 10, 15, 20 years ago in terms of materially in their lives. So it's something that shouldn't be discarded and something that we should look at. And for the men who are trying to do it, don't do it unless you got the money. Don't do it unless you've got the patience. And if you're going to source your talent, all I can say is that, you know, you don't source basketball players from a school full of midgets. So if you're looking for women who would be amenable to that lifestyle, it's best to source women who've grown up in that lifestyle. You know, places like Senegal, places like Nigeria or wherever that you can find in the African world where polygyny is commonplace. So you can have a woman who grew up under that system. It will cause less headaches than trying to convince a woman that grew up in a European-based society to do polygyny. So that is some of the advice that I would give the young brothers, just from somebody who's, you know, gone down the path and had these conversations and been vetting, you know, my wife, we've talked about it, and, you know, she's pro polygyny. It just has to be the right person, you know, someone of value and someone who, for me, frankly, wouldn't be a headache, you know? So it's very viable. It should be considered. People should talk about it, and people should be honest about it from the gate, you know, and that's a whole nother conversation. But, you know, I just said my piece.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Well said, well said, well said. Brother Baruch.
Yeah. Again, I think this is a very significant conversation. And it's interesting because it comes at a very significant time in my life as I contemplate the very thing that we're talking about once again. And so two things that I wanted to say is, this isn't just that we're in a European culture or European run country. We're at war. And our enemy does not want to give us ammunition to defeat him. And we know that part of that ammunition is if there are more of us, then it becomes more difficult to defeat us. So it only makes sense that they would make this weird and absurd and unacceptable. And to think that they've caused our women to so vehemently oppose it is amazing, but it also speaks to the level of witchcraft, but yet the level of warcraft that they are prepared to engage. They know how important this is. And that's why they make it so wicked that somebody would pursue. But we're at war. So our decisions are not based on, what makes me feel good and what looks good and what's going to be easy. It's not about ease. This is a necessity. This is a need. And there are unborn giants sitting inside of us that are waiting to be born and waiting to be brought into this space so that they can do the work that is so necessary to be done. And we're holding back because we're wanting to be more acceptable in the culture, this oppressive culture that's telling us, no, don't do it. And then I wanted to say also that Haru mentioned about reward. Well, the reward, as I see it, and I think this is maybe how Haru was mentioning it, but I wanted to clarify for my own sake that the reward is the 5 children. And I talk to people. I say I've had intercourse with, well, not many, but I've had intercourse a lot of times. But I'll say this, and I really mean it in the depths of my soul. I mean it. It's only been 5 experiences that were like out of this world. There were only 5 experiences that I've had that were out of this. All the rest of them were, whatever. It came and it went, literally, pun intended. And I think we need to wake up and understand the purposes of our relationship. And we also need to understand the value of our bloodline making it to the finish line. And part of this, you have to dismantle some of the institutions that have been placed in our life that we think are an authority in a space. And one of them is religion. And a religion has us believing that, it's going to be better on the other side. Well, as I was taught, the other side is the five children. That's the other side. That's the better. And that we need to do everything that we can to fortify, support, and give them the understanding going forward so that they can make better decisions about your furtherance, because it's their children that's going to further your bloodline and your seed and your life and your spirit and your culture and your agenda. And that's why, again, it's so important for our enemy to shut that down. They have to shut that down, and they have to make popular and exciting and acceptable all these things that are abhorrent, And again, I see this as a very important conversation, and I see this as a conversation that must be addressed in this manner, as opposed to, I took down 2 pictures off the internet today. One of a guy sitting between 2 women that were naked and had their little Santa Claus hats on, and they represented that side of commercialized what they want you to believe is polygyny. And then polygyny. And then we see another. I pulled down another picture just today of an African brother with 4 wives and his 10 or 15 children, and the power that represents. Is complete. One is that at the end of the day, what? I mean, so you had a pleasure. So pleasure was the defining desire. That was the thing that you were in pursuit after. You were in the pursuit of pleasure, as opposed to being in pursuit of purpose and the perpetuation of your kind. I want to see the end. I want my kind. I want my bloodline to be at the finish line. And that's why I see it as being so important. And that's why I understand it's that much more important for my enemy to do everything he can to make this the worst thing, the most negative thing that you can think about is me reproducing life. People frown on it. They frown on, why would you want to have more children? Why wouldn't I? I have a mouth that works, so I talk. I have eyes that work, so I look. I have ears that work, so I listen. I have reproductive organs that work. So, I shelve them? No, I reproduce. And I look forward to reproducing many, many times. And I'm on the other side of 50. But I look forward to reproducing many more children, hopefully more than I've produced already.
Good luck.
Yeah, well, brother, thank you so very much. Before we go to Brother Obadele to close out or to give his take, thank you so much, brother, for coming on, for sharing your experiences with us. And as you said, the other side is your children. And brothers and sisters, we have to really think about it. We may take it for joke, but imagine you see you have 20 children and they are brought up in the philosophy of what we believe in and know. And they're able to go out to 20 different cities, organize UNIA chapters, division all over the state, all over the country, all over the world, and just continue to build. Imagine if conscious black man had more children and bring them up in a conscious environment. Imagine if all these fourth graders had strong fathers with them who can guide them, and so they don't end up into the prison justice system that's moving to incarcerate instead of to educate. Imagine if these children are directed by strong Afrocentric brothers and sisters. Brother Obadele.
Right. I think there was a very good point that was made by Dr. Baruch in terms of, in a war, you don't want your enemies to get more soldiers, right? So, all of the suggestions that the enemies of Black people, who in classical Kemet we would refer to as the Amu. Amu was a blanket term to refer to all Eurasians. It wasn't a thing of, oh, you're from Europe and you're from Asia. Like that whole modern day thing is coming from a Greco-Roman worldview that saw the center of the world as the Aegean Sea. And then to the west of that is, so-called Europe. And then to the east of that is so-called Asia. That what we used to do is we said all of them are Amu, all of them are Eurasians, whether it's like how Baba Umwale says that, or whether it's a German Shepherd, whether it's a French Poodle, whether it's an English, they're all dogs, right? So we had that type of blanket, thing. But to come back to the point that this is really connected. We started off talking a lot about IT. And some people, when they think about the Haitian Revolution, they know, oh, well, they defeated the French. But a lot of people don't know that they also defeated the British. So in 1793, the British invaded the island. They were invited by French royalists to come. And, by 1798, the British actually, had been defeated in key battles, and they formally withdrew by October of that year. And, when people look at 1807 of the British abolishing, quote unquote, trade, as they called it, what they didn't abolish enslavement. What they just abolished was the new Black people who were coming from the continent who were being taken there. And it was very practical in terms of a wartime strategy that if you've already been defeated by the Black people who are already on the islands, then, every single shipload that comes is another regiment. There's more reinforcements that are going to whip you even further. And their fear, and when you read the documents, it's not about, oh, they had heartstrings and, they heard the violence, oh, we're doing the wrong thing. That's what they try to project. But when you actually read the documents at that time, everything is, we fear that this will spread to Jamaica. We fear that this is going to spread to the United States of America. We fear that, everything is about fear, not about, oh, we have economic concerns and we're switching to industrial. No, they're saying we fear that what happened in IT is going to happen, further on. So, when it comes down to just the point of they don't want more soldiers, more of our warriors to come into being, that you can find a parallel between that's the reason why they stopped the quote unquote trade, which is the shipment of new Black people to the Western Hemisphere before they stopped chattel enslavement, because when they stopped, at least theoretically, when they stopped it, it was literally due to, in Jamaica, the uprising there, where they realized, what, we're getting our butts whooped again. We have to just, find a new way to enslave Black. We're not going to stop it. We're just going to find a new way to enslave Black people. So both their quote unquote abolition of the trade and their abolition of quote unquote chattel enslavement were both due to uprisings of Black people. So they didn't give us anything. So I wanted to make that point, that their military strategy at that time is very similar to their military strategy right now, in terms of, there's a documentary called Ma'afa 21 that actually goes into where you find more, fertility clinics in the quote unquote white communities. And then you find more, abortion clinics in the black community. Like there's a direct correlation. It's like, I don't know how much clearer you need it in front of you before you realize that. And also another name was mentioned, Nana Amos Wilson. And one of my favorite lectures is a Blueprint for Black Power lecture, where he asks certain questions, and he talks about spirit possession and what has been implanted into us. My father, Nana Kamal Kamban, used to say we all have a little whitey inside of us.
Right.
And it's implanted into us, not for our own interest, but for the interest of the ones who did the implantation in the first place. But in it, he goes through a series of successive questions to ask people whether you have that little, cracker, as I would call it, inside of you. So he asks questions like, what food do you eat? Right? Some of you may be familiar with this. Like, he's like, these aren't the foods of our own people. So he's basically saying we're in an artificial selection type of context in terms of even the food that we eat. He was like, in a natural context, what foods would you be eating? Right? These weren't the foods that were on the continent that our ancestors were eating, so forth. He says, what clothes do you wear? Right? These aren't the clothes, and he's pointing to his own. He's wearing a suit in the lecture. These aren't the clothes of our ancestors. He goes on down the line, and I would add to that, what form of marriage do you practice, right? So to all of those things, if we need evidence that we have a little cracker implanted inside of us, if we are, knee-jerk kicking like, oh, no, we shouldn't do that, so forth and so on, then that is exhibit, I don't even know what, C, D, or E, along with all the other things. What God do you worship? What does he look like? He goes through all those things that I think that this is really the ultimate question in terms of whether you plan on existing or whether you plan on not existing. In my own background, my great-grandmother was one of 14 children, so I also want 14 children. I have 5. I got 9 to go. I said, and Heru will recognize this, I want the complete set, right? So I have Ama, but I don't have Kwame, right? I have Kweku, but I don't have Ikia. I have Yao, but I don't have Ya, right? I have Akosia, I don't have Kwesi. So they have these names that there's a male and female counterpart for each day. And I'm like, we're lacking. We need to get 9 more to get the complete set, right?
Yes, sir.
But I'll close on this point that in our own natural context, oftentimes wealth is based on how many children you have. And that's in terms of land allocated, not, oh, I'm buying land as is done under an artificial context, but the traditional ruler will allocate land to a specific family on the basis of how many children that person has who's able to work the land. So this is why, enslaving people say, oh, you enslave your own brothers and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's a very unnatural thing because your very wealth, everything is based on how many children are in your household, how many descendants you have who are able to work the land and so forth and so on. So these are the types of considerations we have in our own natural context. But when we have a cracker context, we are trying to basically have as few children as possible. And, we're doing things that are very unnatural, just like the rats in the Skinner box. And the last point that so for me, my main thing is qualifications. Like, I actually haven't met a woman who I think would qualify as a second wife for me to even, push the point. So my wife and I have discussed this multiple times. And, I haven't met a woman who was up to her caliber. Like, for me, she would already have to be wearing our clothes. She'd have to already be eating our foods. She'd have to already, and oftentimes, when we were discussing it in the past, it was former Hebrew Israelites here in Ghana who were part of that conversation because they were already used to it. They had already, they were already eating in a particular type of way. They're already wearing a specific type of clothes and so forth and so on. So, those were some of the conversations that were had. But up to this point, I haven't, said, all right, well, this is the one who I'm interested in and so forth. Let's bring up the conversation in a more real way. But yeah, I think that another thing is, just as was mentioned, you would want a woman who is going to be on the same page and not, bring Isfed into the family, but actually bring Ma'at into the family and, assist in the works that are being done. But the last point I wanted to make was, in our context, on the physical plane, males practice polygyny, as is being called in the English language, but females practice it in terms of abosom, typically, like in an Akan context, it tends to be the females who are akomfor, and they would have multiple abosom that they would be married to, and they actually live with those abosom as being married, where they won't sleep with their physical husband, on the night that's dedicated to their obosom. So my mother is an Okomfo, so she has a Sujubi. And we won't go so deep into it, but I just wanted to put that out there because it hasn't been discussed so far, that, you know, there are parallel systems in operation in the sense of the males, you know, have polygyny on a physical plane, and then the females do something that's parallel in the spiritual plane. And I think I'll close on that. Perhaps we can have a deeper discussion in terms of our own spiritual systems and, you know, what goes into those as well at a different time. But Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahudi.
Thank you, Abibi Tumi.
Okay, let's get ready to close out, President. No, go ahead, and then I'll close out.
Yeah, brother. Thank you so very much for the conversation, the information. We're here to enlighten our people and give people more information about our art, our way of life, our culture, our people, what we have done in the past that can affect us going on in the future. I couldn't have had 3 more qualified brothers tonight to share these experiences with us. So we sincerely thank you. We are grateful to be in your presence, and thank you for sharing this wonderful information, valuable information to our listeners. We have a duty to uplift and build a race, and the race is depending on us. This platform we're going to use to do just that. So any topic that relevant to our community, to our people, we will bring it here. And thank you so much, brother, for sharing these valuable information with us.
Okay, let me close out. To the 3 brothers, thank you. I learned a lot, and we could be here forever. So please, as we get ready to close out, just remember Sunday, the Kwanzaa event for the Brooklyn division for the UNIA. It's at 1368 Fulton Street. That's at Restoration Plaza, 3 to 7 p.m. The keynote speaker is your President General, and we're celebrating the 4th principle, cooperative economics. How we built the rock, how we do it. So please come out. So all of you out in UNI Rock Media Land and Community Focus, please raise your beautiful right and noble fists and repeat after me. Africa.
Well,
Africa.
For the Africans.
For the Africans.
For the Africans.
Those at home.
Those at home.
Those at home.
And those abroad.
And those abroad.
Because it's one God.
One God.
One Yami.
One aim.
One aim.
One aim.
And one destiny.
One destiny.
And of course, race first.
Race first.
All day.
Long live the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Long live the Honorable Carlos A. Cooks. Long live your Emperor, the General Jean-Jacques Dessalines. And finally, long live your President General, the Honorable Michael R. Duncan. See you Sunday, Kwanzaa event, 3 to 7 p.m. in Brooklyn. Have a good night, Africans.
Good night, and thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
The Community Focus Show is brought to you by Jamaica Breeze.
Calling us home. So long we have been a slave and no more will we roam. So I hope and I pray that the day will come when we see the rising sun. When no more crying, nor victimizing, no more starvation.